Hello and welcome back to the channel. We've got the finals of the Wave 2 championships, right? Winners will be crowned today. You already know the matchup. It's a rematch of the last video. Black Yellow Luffy and Doflamingo. This Black Yellow Luffy that we've been watching right in that last video was the only one to make it inside the top 32, so has been surviving throughout the entire way, has made its way into the finals. We'll see exactly how it does. Going to be a really interesting of a matchup in my opinion. We saw the Black Yellow Luffy really get by the Doflamingo just by a hair. Was a very tight and close match, and both players are running interesting tech cards within their deck. Both the Black Yellow Luffy and Doflamingo have their own spices, their own renditions to the deck that we haven't really seen too much heading up to this point. Black Yellow Luffy, if you do not know, is a deck that really relies on cycling its life and characters, right? Being able to boost its own power for the opponent's turn as well. Makes it a 9,000 power leader pretty much almost every single turn from them to their opponent. Makes it really hard to swing at it once the cycle gets going. Cycling 5-cost Sabo, right? The 5-cost Egghead Luffy as well, being able to blow up characters, especially within this matchup. Those are going to be two really important cards that we'll see featured within this match. The Doflamingo prioritizes swarming out bodies, right? Wants to put out a ton of bodies on the field through its leader effect in order to overwhelm the opponent. We do see a little bit more of removal in this deck, right? With the inclusion of Gum Gum Redhawk. This player is playing the 9-cost Dracul Mihawk as well. And do not worry, we'll show lists for both players after the match as always that we do. Before we get into too much more in this match starts, just want to go over a couple logistical things. First, I am not the official live stream for this tournament. As always, if you want to watch the official live stream instead of my unique English commentary just for good practice and learning, make sure to go click the link in the description below. But for those of you that want to join, I appreciate you staying here. And before we get into it, let's hear from a word from our sponsor. I've been collecting in trading card games for many years, and especially with One Piece, I only use one app to be able to track which cards that I have inside my collection because, well, I can't hold all of the SRs, commons, uncommons, whatever, whenever I go to locals. OP TCG DEX is the ultimate companion app for all things One Piece trading card game. Whether you're collecting cards, building decks, or looking to level up your game, this app has you covered. Listen, there's a lot of perks within this app on your phone. If you're like me and don't remember what amounts of cards you have, there's a really easy filter system within the app. Alongside logging not only English and Japanese cards, you can also check the prices straight from TCG Player or UUT. You can also build your decks right there on your mobile device and then export them to the simulator later. And honestly, that's just scratching the surface of this app. You can download this app for free on both the App Store and Google Play Store. But you can also get the pro version of this app free for 30 days just by using my code Atrocious. Listen, when you get the pro version, the app offers such cool perks, such as getting extra deck slots, taking notes on your cards or decks, an excellent feature when you go out and play in like local tournaments, online tournaments, things of that nature, or maybe even sim games. And you also get ad-free browsing, which, I mean, how can you go wrong with ad-free browsing? As well as a currency converter and also card market prices. The download link and instructions to redeem your trial are in the description below. Don't miss out now. Check it out. Let me know what you think in the comments. And so here we go, looking at the Black Yellow Luffy's starting hand that he's got right here. He's got a baby and punch Luffy right there, that 2 and 5 cost, a couple 2Ks in the Hiyori and Flampe, as well as a blocker Sabo. You definitely want to see the Egghead Luffy. I think that's kind of one of the key cards within this deck, but the punch Luffy, not a bad option as well, being able, if your Doflamingo opponent starves you, to be able to force yourself to go down, manipulate exactly when you're going to go down to that 0 life to then go ahead ahead and use leader effect. Plus, if they decide to swing with the 4 costs that they have, that Luffy is going to be able to combat those different characters. Even a Jozu potentially will be able to combat. So definitely a nice card to see. We'll see exactly how he decides to build out this game plan, maybe playing the Flampe early, but the Doflamingo over here with those second anniversary Kaya and Boa Hancock blockers. Beautiful, beautiful cards. I want that Kaya for my Nami deck, but also has a Jinbei, Dracula Mihawk, and Trafalgar Law. So a couple nice 2Ks, Jinbei being a fantastic card within this deck. One of the problems that we may run into, especially if the Rocket or Egghead Luffy is present within this game, is all of these characters that the Doflamingo has are 4 costs. So we'll see if he can find one of those through the searching, and we'll see if it'll be a factor in this game. But on the 1 Dawn turn, decides to not play the Flampe. Says, you know what, I want to keep this 2K in hand, I want to keep the life as is, and I'm just going to pass and draw into the pieces that I need at this point. We might see that baby Luffy get played in the next turn. The Doflamingo is going to use that Kaya to draw 2 and trash 2. Does off the top deck and those draw 2s find a couple of different interesting cards. Jozu, I mentioned, a great card, is able to remove a lot of things on this Luffy's field. Weevil, just a good 6,000 power character in general. And then that prize 9 cost Dracula Mihawk, that's a prize of OP01, that SR Dracula Mihawk, in case you're not familiar with the different Japanese arts and stuff of the sort. Definitely going to be a nice card, right? Being able to bottom deck things are so good potentially in this matchup, because if things go back into hand or in the discard pile, the Black Gill Luffy's just going to be able to get it again and again, right? Being able to cycle those. But the Dracula Mihawk and Red Hawk be able to prevent the opponent from doing just that. So Black Gill Luffy, as I mentioned, playing down that baby Luffy after swinging 6, the Doflamingo is going to take life. Doesn't want to take too much counter out of the hand yet. Is going to just start out by swinging 5, see what they do. You don't want to sit too long. A nice Raigo right there for the top of the life. Don't want to use the trigger, don't want to use that Raigo trigger on Kaya. We see Black Gill Luffy players usually hold that Raigo for Jozus when they hit the field. So now spreading out with the rest of the 4 Dawn, a Jinbei Weevil, the Weevil drawing a nice 2K. The Black Gill Luffy is just going to go ahead, swing again, poke, and kind of the problem with this hand, aside from the Jozu, you really don't have anything you want to give up at this point. If you're the Doflamingo, right, you got a whole bunch of 2Ks, and you don't want to give a 2K for a little 5 swing, so goes down to 3 life right here, and I think the draw picking up a Raigo and 3 Brothers Bond, so prioritizing that 3 Brothers Bond. Does now have 2 baby Sabos in the hand. Is maybe going to think about on the next turn playing the 3 Brothers Bond to try to find a piece like that Egghead Luffy that I mentioned earlier, and Raigo, even though Jozu probably prominent in this deck, right? In Japan, a lot of the Doflamingos are playing Jozus, not necessarily a fringe card like a lot of the Western meta is going to pass it off into the Doflamingo's turn. Finding a Pudding is going to be very, very nice in this matchup. One of the strong points and a one of in this deck, actually looking at the deck list, but the 5K swing is going to go ahead and take that life. I like the take right here, honestly. If I am the Luffy, really forces the opponent to think about, okay, do I want to continue going at life with these characters, or do I want to use my Dawn to establish board? He's at 6 Dawn at this point, so Jozu probably one of the things that could come out on the field, and is going to go ahead and swing with these characters while he can. It's just going to swing a nice 5 to get a counter off of the Sabo. So no matter what, now Sabo is going to be on the field, and instead of swinging with the Weevil, is just going to have that Jozu play down, pick up the Kaya, and get the Sabo. Says, you know what, I don't want you to go down to 1 life. I want to keep you at this 2 right now, especially after you countered, and we'll go on into the 7 Dawn turn. Now, if they would have played the Raigo right, the Raigo would have taken out one of their own life instead of leaving them at that one like the Raigo says. So Jozu right now kind of safe on the field, no Kuzans on the field. Maybe an Ice Age could come down, but Hiyori is going to be the play, maybe going to be using one of these little babies that he's got, and that baby Luffy staying on the field is going to go ahead and get that punch Luffy in the life. A Jozu was just played, right? So back-to-back Jozus not really going to be a thing a lot of times within the Doflamingo decks, especially with such minimal draw and top deck manipulation. So I do like this Luffy as a safe play, right? Reacting to the Jozu, forcing your opponent, okay, do you want to even swing with it at this point? And the Three Brothers Bond that they play is going to potentially grab another Luffy, maybe thinking about a different option, but ultimately decides with that Luffy. Gonna put it in hand, put 2 on, maybe use leader effect, and maybe evolve one more time, maybe evolve into a Sabo potentially. So we'll see what he exactly pitches on this leader effect. You gotta imagine maybe pitching this 5-cost Sabo that you have in hand in order to have 2 Sabos in the discard pile and say, okay, you know what, you play a Gravity Blade or something, get rid of my Luffy and Sabo, I'm gonna have another Sabo ready to rock and roll, and decides to go double Sabo in the life. Very interesting. Is going to go ahead, play down that baby with the 2 Dawn that he has left in order to get the draw 2, trash 2. Does find the Egghead Luffy and a baby Luffy right there, but you do have to pitch 2 cards, maybe 3 Brothers Bond. Kind of have a lot of the pieces of the puzzle at this point, so I don't mind a 3 Brothers Bond pitch. All it's really good for maybe at this point is pitching geckos, bottom decking geckos, not pitching geckos. But now at this point, thinking about what you want to trash, maybe even pitching a 2K as well, trying to hold up the hand of 6 cards, right? Pudding is a very strong card, but you would be able to draw into 5 cards. So what cards do you want to go back into the deck potentially? And so now swings 11,000 power at lead, takes a life. This is kind of the stage of the game as well, that as Doflamingo, it gets really hard to defend these leader swings, right? A lot of these turns of the Black Hill Luffy is just get up to 11,000 power, right? 2 babies plus the 2 Dawn, and just swing at life, right? It's going to cost 4 cards at least for the Doflamingo to be able to counter out of an 11,000 power swing, right? 3 2Ks and a 1K just to get out of the leader itself, not to mention any other characters that may be on the field. And especially at 8 Dawn, you cannot play the Dracula Mihawk at this point. Dracula Mihawk being a 9-cost character means that this Luffy, I think, is going to be able to stay on the field, right? There's no red rocks in the hand to get rid of it, no gravity blades, anything like that, not even something to put it back in hand, no Jozus, or really, actually, Jozu would be the only thing. The 4-drop law from starter deck 17 can't bring that back. So Luffy is going to be a strong point, I feel like, heading into this next turn. And the Doflamingo's kind of in an awkward spot right now. What do you do with your 8 Dawn right now? Do you go in, you try to go aggressive? You do have to match 9,000 power in order to swing at the Luffy. And here comes the 1-drop Perona. If you're not all knowing of what this art actually is, this is the 1-drop Perona that stacks the top 5. It's a reprint of OP01. I know that's something we don't have in the West as of right now, but is going to be reordering that top 5. Looks like maybe thinking about putting Jozu on the top. I do like having Jozu on the top. Jozu just a really good card in this matchup. You want as many of them as possible, and is going to go in, play the the Kaya, I'm sorry. The Kaya is going to be nice because that's going to allow you to grab that Jozu right away, right? You don't need to think about it until the next turn. And you got 6 Dawn left to be able to play this Jozu down to round out the end of the turn. Look at all of these 2Ks in hand from this Doflamingo. Goes ahead and pitches a Pudding and Sengoku, forfeiting the Pudding for this game. And the Jozu is going to go ahead, pick up the Kaya, and pick up that Luffy. So was safe for a little bit, but being able to utilize the Perona and Kaya combo, right, ensured that keeping that Luffy off the field was a nice option. And so we'll see how the Black Eel Luffy decides to play out this 9 Dawn turn, right? Can still use the 2 Dawn for the baby Sabo that they have in hand, right? Would be able to get this Sabo out of the life and be able to allow you to draw 2 and trash 2, right? Maybe find one of these geckos that they're showing on the screen. I think that's what they're going around into looking, going to play that guy down, get the Sabo on the field, draw 2. We'll see what it is. It looks like it's going to be a Kuzan and punch Luffy. So no geckos as of yet. You're definitely all right with pitching the Kuzan. The time for Kuzan is on curve, and that's pretty much it. So you don't need that guy anymore. Is going to go ahead, do Kuzan and punch Luffy, one of the 2 that they had in hand. Going to be thinking about what to put in life at this point. Maybe thinking of the Rocket Luffy or the Egghead Luffy, I would say might be something to get rid of the Weevil or Jinbei. But something that I mentioned in the last video that I think is very interesting is, do you even worry about these 4-cost characters? Does Egghead Luffy actually matter at this point of the matchup when you're continuously going to 9, right? It is nice because you do get to draw a card off the Egghead Luffy, but are you worried about the 6,000 power Weevil? Are you worried about the 5,000 power Jinbei? Because it takes so much to be able to get these characters out, and looks like swinging with one of the blockers just gets really aggressive, is forcing the opponent to say, okay, I know you got a ton of counter in hand, you have done a ton of filtering, you must have a lot of 2Ks at this point, so let me go ahead and swing 9. Let's see how much you actually have, how much life, because you know probably an 11,000 power, especially with 2 Dawn left on the board as active, 11,000 power are coming in this upcoming swing. So what are you going to get rid of is really going to neutralize this hand of the Doflamingo. I really like this swing at this point. And so countering out of that one, does not want to go down to 1 life as of yet, saving that for the leader swing. I think is thinking of pitching the 3 Brothers Bond for the leader effect. Does have 3 baby Luffys in hand. So although no Gecko Moria, right, the baby Luffys, or I'm sorry, 3 baby Luffys and 1 baby Sabo, the babies are going to continuously keep coming. You are going to have a couple more turns of 9,000 power. Absolutely great job, especially managing the babies when you don't have an unsearchable card like Gecko. We'll see if in EBO2 the Luffy start playing those searchable cards, right? We do know that those searcher events are coming, and don't worry, we'll do a full EBO2 set review on the channel here in the near future, so subscribe if you want to see that. But going back to this game, pitching that 3 Brothers Bond, like I mentioned, putting the 2 Luffys in life, the Rocket Egghead Luffy and also the Punch Luffy, is going to go ahead, play that Punch Luffy down, force the opponent to say, all right, if you're going to bottom deck something, it's going to be this guy, or remove from field, not going to be one of my blockers. And the 11,000 swing is going to go through. Does not need to boost the Luffy. You do want to keep 1 life, right? There are 2 Jozus on the field. You don't want to lose to a bunch of heavy hitting swings, especially when you only have 5 cards in your hand. So being able to put a life in there that maybe you don't really need exactly, if it does stay on and they get really passive, they don't swing, it's going to be really nice for you, right? You can evolve into it with the baby Luffys in your hand. And a really interesting spot for this Doflamingo, right? You want to get rid of this Luffy on the field, and if you do, it's pretty much going to command the rest of your turn. Nothing else is going to swing if you're going to play that Dracula Mihawk. So we'll see exactly where he goes, and would be a lot of swings coming in if you don't. I mean, the swings that are going to come in if you do not get rid of this Luffy, right? Maybe you go a little bit taller and you swing a couple times with these Jozu. You're probably going to have an 11,000 swing from lead, and you're going to have a big swing coming in from this Punch Luffy, right? It's definitely going to power up. So it's got to be something that you get off the field at this point. So what do you exactly do? is going to go ahead, rest 9, play that Mihawk, neutralize the 5-cost Luffy, says, you know what, I'm going to minimize the amount of swings are coming my way and pass the turn off to you. Can't do anything else, right? No more swinging at different bodies after that Weevil KO'd the Sabo, and no swinging at a 9,000 power leader. So getting a Garp off the top deck, a perfect card to pitch for leader effect heading into this turn, is going to definitely use 2 Dawn for that baby Luffy, right? Is going to get that Luffy out of life and cycle it, maybe using that to KO the Jinbei on the field. Maybe honestly the Weevil. I think maybe you want to go for the Weevil, right? It's 1,000 power more than the Jinbei, is going to take an extra Dawn to be able to swing more resources on your turn, and also you don't have to swing at that guy, which is very nice in my personal opinion. So I do like going for this Weevil play. Is going to draw one. It's going to be a baby Sabo, still no Gecko, but the babies are flowing in, right? Gecko not really needed. I mean, it's a really good body and a really good card to be able to utilize within this deck, and is one of the reasons that this deck is so strong. But finding the babies is going to be who needs Gecko at this point. And so is going to attach 4 Dawn, swing 9 or 10, I'm sorry. So swinging 10 at lead. This is going to be really interesting. Remember that the leader is 7,000 power at this point. Gonna go with 4 Dawn left, use leader effect, put 2 guys in life, evolve into one of them, right? Maybe the Punch Luffy, you could say, or maybe another blocker Sabo, become a 9,000 power character, swing 11, and then have just a random life just sitting there. So you're swinging 10 and 11 at this point with this blocker Sabo being on the field. Absolutely a menace, and with an 11,000 power swing you will be able to counter out of it, but it'll take most everything from your hand. How do you continue to survive in this one? It's going to be really tough for the Doflamingo. So pitching the Punch Luffy for the leader effect is going to go ahead, play that baby Sabo the end of turn, get a blocker on field, is going to draw 2, trash 2. Still no Geckos, by the way, but who needs Gecko when you've got the different characters on the field? I think maybe getting rid of your big Luffys and or the Garp can be really nice at this point in case you need to stall for another turn, right? You can be able to just cycle these babies once again. You've got a guaranteed another turn that you could be a 9,000 power leader after this one. Just a great job, in my opinion, from this Black Eel Luffy in this match. And so is going to go ahead and command 4 cards, like I mentioned, 2K, 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 1K, to get out of that swing and not lose the game. But with only 3 cards left in hand, how do you win from here? Like, you have to go from game at this point or play down the Boa. Maybe you could play like double Boa if you wanted to, but you got to spread out your Dawn. You got to start swinging at this Luffy. You got to hope that nothing is in the hand. But what's the correct math at this point? Definitely a tough position, and one of the reasons why Black Eel Luffy, in my opinion, as I mentioned in our OP10 tier list, is a top tier deck, right? Is a strong deck because it has, in my opinion, a pretty decent matchup into Doflamingo, especially if you're a good long-time player. And so is thinking around the Mihawk is the one that is able to swing for lowest amount of Dawn, and with that swing right there is just going to be a nice 2K to get out of it, right? That swing being 10,000 power, just an easy 2K. What do you do with the rest of the Dawn? Do you just swing a bunch of ones? There's a blocker also on the field. It's just going to be so tough, I feel like, for the Doflamingo. I just don't know how they win this. Is going to go ahead, attach 2 Dawn to the Jozu, swing another 9,000. All you got to do is just give little 1Ks. Now, you got to think about this as the Luffy, right? As the Luffy right here, what do you get rid of first, in what order? Do you get rid of the character first? Do you get rid of the blocker first in your hand? Do you get rid of these babies? And it's just going to go down the line of the characters. I think maybe wants to prioritize keeping the blocker Sabo on the field, if you can, as just another character to swing with, right? In case they pivot and go like a Boa. And with this 6,000 power swing from the Jinbei. That might be what they're alluding to right now at this point. So we'll see with the rest of the Dawn what they decide to do. Looks like going to be another 9,000 power swing is going to have to fetch a 1K, and there we go with that. Luffy is going to go ahead, play the Boa to round out the turn. A nice blocker is going to kind of make it a little bit awkward, but with the Luffy in hand, right, that baby Luffy, you're going to be able to pop that Boa for just 2 Dawn and then swing away for the rest of the life. So great job by this Black Yellow Luffy, actually also on being countering, right? Puts himself in a position to be able to get rid of this blocker Boa and swing in with the rest of the way. The Luffy, now a 7,000 power leader, swings 15 at lead and claims the win. Black Yellow Luffy winning the Japan Wave 2 Finals. An absolute masterclass of a deck, in my personal opinion. A great job showcasing what you could do. Doesn't necessarily showcase any of the tech cards, right? We'll show you the different tech cards here in a second, but the Old Faithful doesn't even need Gecko. So all y'all saying ban Gecko, make this deck obsolete, well, seems to be not too bad without Gecko. So anyways, I'm just playing around with you guys, but let's get into the deck list. This is the deck list from the Doflamingo. Very interesting, and I really like this deck list, right? I think Red Rock, one of the tech cards and choices within this deck, is very nice, right? Being able to bottom deck anything that comes on the field. Can get rid of pesky Gecko Morias, right? Really, really nice. Can get rid of 10-drop Marshall D. Teach or 10-drop Shanks, right? In certain other matchups. Really is able to battle the boss monsters that you're going to face up against. And then 9-cost Dracula Mihawk is a really cheeky card, in my personal opinion. Is searchable, right? Is searchable off of the Sengoku, being able to find one of those. And also bottom decking just can be very good, right, in a lot of different matchups instead of putting it to hand. Absolutely great illustration as well. One of my favorite illustrations from OP01. The rest of this deck, pretty standard, I would say, to a lot of what we see. You got Perfume Femur here, the classic 4 drops of the 7 Warlords of the Sea, as well as just a one of Pudding in this list. Pudding being so instrumental, and a lot of people actually, especially on Twitter, saying ban Pudding. It's a crazy card. Why is it in the One Piece trading card game? And I do think that there's a little bit of validity as to this card is really weird in the One Piece trading card game, but still being at least a one of in this deck. The truly unsearchable card within this deck, but being able to manipulate your top deck through several different functions of Perona, Buggy, the Boa Hancock as well, allows you to be able to draw into it a lot of times, and knowing when you're going to draw into it. Jozu, a staple, it seems like, in these Japanese deck lists. We'll see if it continues through in the Japan Finals happening on February, what is that? I wrote it on my calendar. February 9th, right? We'll cover those matches on the channel as always, because likely Doflamingo going to be played within that tournament in order to try to qualify for the World Finals. Now, here's the Black Yellow Luffy's deck list. Definitely an interesting deck, right? Even with these different tech cards, still plays 3 Ragos, still plays 3 Kuzan, and a full playset of 3 Brothers Bond. But these tech cards do actually make sense. Sabo, a searchable 2K in the deck, right through Garp, 3 Brothers Bond, is a very nice card, and also is a 5 cost of your 3 brothers, so you can evolve into it with your baby Sabo and use its effect if times get a little bit dire. Definitely not your first option to evolve into. That is reserved for the 5 cost Sabo from OP04, but is, like I mentioned, just another option for you and is searchable. The Capone Gang Beijay from OP10 is a really cool 2K and 1-drop in this deck. I really, really like this card in theory. Haven't seen it in this tournament, but might be something, like I mentioned, in the Japan Finals that we might see here in a couple weeks once EBO2 releases. But this 1-drop on play, you may add 1 card from the top or bottom of your life cards to your hand, and if you do, you add up to 1 character with the type Supernova from your hand to the top of your life cards face up. So actually has decent synergy. You may be wondering, what are the supernova cards in this deck? This Luffy right here from starter deck 13 is a supernova and is the only other supernova in your deck. So has great synergy, like I mentioned, being able to put in the life and then potentially use for this baby Luffy, right? We did see that in the early stages of the game, right? The 2-3 Dawn turn, that Black Eel Luffy goes in, they play this card, right? They slap it on the field and then later use some top of life manipulation like Hiyori to put something like this Luffy in the life on the 5 Dawn turn, let's say, or even the 4 Dawn turn, and then go in and be able to play on a 4 Dawn turn this guy right here, a 5-cost character. Is definitely an interesting way to go in and play the game. Gecko not getting any limelight at all. I don't even think we saw it in any like searches. We didn't even use Three Brothers Bond, I don't think, in this match. We didn't even bottom deck any geckos. He just didn't see any at all. But showcasing a masterclass of what you want to do in the Doflamingo matchup, I think handled it very, very well from that perspective. That's going to be all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I've got a couple stuff planned in terms of other videos before the Japan Championships, and especially with EBO2 coming out right around the corner, I believe at the end of the month. We will be opening that on the channel, courtesy of our sponsor, OP TCG DEX. Thank you again for also sponsoring some of these videos in the tournament. As always, my friend, love working with them, and make sure use that for collecting and also logging all the best special. I try to mix best and special at the same time. Your special cards in your collection. But aside from that, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy yourself, and I'll see you soon.